Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Monica. If this is your first time here, welcome. And I hope you guys are having a great week because over here, we are surviving purely on caffeine, sarcasm, and whatever strength the universe gives mothers of teething toddlers. Today's episode is honestly all over the place, kind of like every episode, but in the best way possible because we are covering everything from an ancient treasure that was discovered to heartbreaking true crime to a toddler's emotional terrorism. So basically, the usual. First, we are diving into some absolutely chaotic internet headlines, including a man in Norway who casually went for a hike and accidentally discovered a 1,500-year-old relic hidden in a tree, which honestly feels rude because I go outside and discover mosquito bites and unpaid bills. So a little bit different there. We're also talking about a major update in the Kristin Smart case nearly 30 years after her disappearance. And this story is still absolutely heartbreaking. Every time it resurfaces, it reminds you of how devastating it is that her family still does not have, complete closure after all these years. And then we are getting into Netflix's documentary, The Crash. I know it's everywhere, you guys, but I just had to. So buckle up because I've had thoughts. And we are talking toxic relationships, manipulation, terrifying evidence, and why this case made me genuinely emotional for Dominic, Russo, and Davion Flanagan. Those boys still should be here. And after watching two different documentaries, I also watched the Hulu version after this. I have a lot to say about how differently Netflix and Hulu handled this story. And then finally, in this week's mom moment, we need to discuss the arrival of a toddler's canine teeth, also known as nature's cruelest joke. Apparently, the first molars were just like the warm up round because these canines have turned my sweet child into a tiny, exhausted vampire with opinions. So, we are talking about how his newest favorite word is also ew, which has been incredibly humbling for me personally. Plus, all the adorable milestones happening lately with his speech, counting, colors, coloring, watching your child become their own little human is honestly like the coolest thing. And it's also like the weirdest thing. So grab your coffee, your emotional support snack, hide your markers from your toddlers, and let's get into it. Okay, first up this week, apparently King Arthur is alive and well in Norway because a random hiker literally went for a walk and accidentally found a 1,500-year-old golden sword relic hidden under a tree. Wow. That's a fun discovery. Meanwhile, I go outside and I just find anxiety. So, according to the reports, this guy in Norway is just like casually hiking around after a storm when he notices like a weird bump under a fallen tree. So he like pokes at it with a stick because apparently some men will poke at literally anything with a stick and then suddenly sees something shiny in the dirt. And no joke, it turns out to be like an ancient gold sword fitting from like the 6th century. So imagine going on your silly little morning walk and then accidentally discovering, or I guess uncovering, a medieval treasure. I can't even find like my headphones sometimes. And this dude like found this ancient sword. Just crazy. So archaeologists said that the artifact likely belonged to some like powerful chief guy during Norway's migration period, which honestly sounds like a very dramatic way of saying everybody was like fighting and stressed. So apparently only around 17 similar artifacts have like ever been found in Northern Europe. So experts are like freaking out over this discovery, which like they should, because like this thing survived wars, centuries, weather, um societal collapse, probably Vikings. I don't know. Like, that's so crazy, you guys. Experts also think that the sword fitting may have been intentionally buried as like an offering to the gods during a time of crisis, which honestly feels relatable in this economy. Like, should we start burying rings, gas prices alone are making me spiritual. So, truly, this story is like kind of amazing because it reminds you of how much history is just like sitting underneath and wanting to be discovered. Also, somewhere there's definitely another man now aggressively poking around some random tree roots with a stick, hoping to find a treasure. And honestly, like, I guess respect. And now, unfortunately, we have to transition from accidental Viking treasure to one of the saddest cases I have followed in a minute because investigators have launched another search connected to Kristin Smart's disappearance nearly 30 years later. And if you don't know Kristin's story, she was a 19-year-old college student who vanished in 1996 after attending a party. Paul Flores was eventually convicted of her murder in 2022, but Kristin still has never been found. And that part absolutely breaks my heart. This new search warrant was served at a home connected to Flores's family, specifically his mother's property, because investigators believe that there still may be evidence tied to Kristin's remains, like 30 years later. That family has spent almost 3 decades without answers, without closure, without being able to properly bring their daughter home. And honestly, every single update in this case makes me furious. Just because it's just so tragic. Investigators reportedly brought in soil experts and cadaver detection methods during the latest search, and authorities have said that they remain committed to finding Kristin, as they should. Because imagine being Kristin's parents and still waking up every day not knowing where your child is. It's absolutely horrific. And I have to say this. So there is a podcast called Your Own Backyard, which deserves like so much credit helping keep this case alive publicly. And I think without this podcast, I don't know if Paul Flores would have ever been convicted, which honestly is both amazing journalism and deeply embarrassing for law enforcement at the same time. Like a podcast host was out there doing side quests, solving cold cases, and everybody else was just like asleep at the wheel. I hope someday Kristin is found and brought home because her family deserves that kind of peace and she deserves that dignity. Also, if you murdered someone and then their body still hasn't been found after some 30 years, you absolutely deserve to rot in prison forever. Yeah. So on that note, we are going to kind of shift gears, not too much, but let's get into our main story today. All right, guys. So we need to talk about Netflix's The Crash. And like this one made me super angry, like really angry, like an anger management type of angry. I'm sure you've seen this. Everyone's seen this. It's all over the internet. By the time you hear this, it might be it might be like old news because I do record a little bit early. It is Memorial Day weekend and it is a gorgeous rainy Sunday today. But yeah, let's get into this story because at the center of this story are two young men, Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan, who should still be here. The documentary opens up with the class of 2022 graduating. Their lives were all just starting, families excited, friends excited, futures ahead of them. These were very promising young men, and the way that the documentary described them and their family and friends described them, they were intelligent, they were smart, they were going places. But instead, they died in a terrible car crash because of a girl named Mackenzie Shirilla. And I'm sorry, after watching all of this evidence laid out, I absolutely believe she did this on purpose. So the documentary opens with police body cam footage from the scene, and it is absolutely horrific. Officers arrive and immediately realize that two occupants are dead on arrival while the driver, Mackenzie, is unconscious but breathing. And right now, police, when they search the car, they're able to find marijuana and mushrooms in the vehicle. Eventually, police identify Mackenzie and they notify her parents and inform them that two boys are dead. Her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and their friend, Davion Flanagan. And honestly, the details from this like crash scene, they're extremely devastating. Police said that Dominic and Davion were basically found like on top of each other from the force of the impact on the passenger side where Dominic was sitting. And that side, it took the worst of the crash because it was pretty evident that there was almost like a quick turn at the end of it, putting all the impact on the passenger side of the vehicle. Meanwhile, in Mackenzie's purse is marijuana, a scale, and 8 grams of mushrooms. So investigators immediately start asking, was this reckless driving? Was she impaired? Did the car malfunction? Or, was this something else entirely? And because Mackenzie was the driver, detectives needed to figure out exactly who she was. So now here's where things start getting super interesting because police asked for access to her phone. And honestly, her parents asked for a lawyer at this moment, which totally fair. Okay. Like that part did make sense to me. Any parent would probably do the same, not really knowing or understanding what really happened in this situation and considering the circumstances that 2 young men lost their lives. But once investigators got into that phone, it became a friggin' gold mine. So we're introduced at this time to Rosie Graham, a part of Mackenzie's like core group of friends. Rosie apparently had over like 200,000 followers on TikTok, while Mackenzie had basically like none when they met. And this is all according to Rosie and everyone around them. Dom absolutely adored Mackenzie. Even though she was younger, her parents let her move in with him right after graduation. He bought her gifts, he bought her clothes, spoiled her constantly. And from the outside, it looked like she was obsessed with him too. Like they were talking about marriage, like soulmate energy, attached at the hip, just like young love. And if you've ever been there, you understand that it's a very deep, just like a very deep love, almost like obsession. But here's the thing about like toxic relationships. They can look romantic right up until they become dangerous. So according to Mackenzie, she remembers basically nothing about the crash except turning onto the street, which convenient, isn't it? Now, one of Davion's friends had Life 360 on him, so police are able to start like reconstructing the night before the crash. The group had been at a graduation party and people believed psychedelics may have been involved. So investigators also discovered text messages between Rosie and Mackenzie discussing bringing drugs to the party. But Rosie's explanation, oh my God. So according to Rosie, this was basically just like a wholesome sleepover, like nothing crazy. Nobody really wanted to do mushrooms. Mackenzie didn't even like smoke that night because she was sick or something. Like, okay, right. Just a casual late night gathering with mushrooms, weed, and apparently shark documentaries and colored pencils. It doesn't make sense to me, but I don't know, maybe kids are different in high school or freshly out of high school today than they were back in my day. But sure, Rosie. Anyway, so around 5 a.m., Dominic walks into the kitchen and announces that they're leaving. So by 5:30, they're on the road. Now, here's a part that I wish had more detail. Like, did they stay up this whole night or did, they go to sleep at one point because it was a sleepover after all? So the police pull surveillance footage from a nearby building. One camera clocks the car going approximately 97.8 miles per hour on a winding residential road. Like, you guys, that is fast AF. That is not an accident waiting to happen. That is a freaking missile. So, toxicology eventually shows that there was THC in their systems, but no alcohol and no mushrooms. So investigators conclude that this was not impaired driving because, mind you, Kenzie had been driving high like all the time. So despite that being in her system, it was something that she did frequently. So it wasn't like anything new or any kind of like motor skill that she was not used to, which leaves you one question. Why didn't she stop? So A forensic investigator fully examines the car. The brakes, they're working. The steering, it's working. The tires, they're fine. Acceleration, everything is fine. There's absolutely no malfunction whatsoever with this vehicle. There was even a slipper found near the gas pedal, and investigators determined that it had absolutely nothing to do with the crash. Yes, and they were Prada slippers because this is how Kenzie was. Then they pull the EDR, basically, which it's like the car's black box that you would find on an airplane. So it gives like everything that the car has done. And this is where the entire case changes. For 5 full seconds before the impact, the accelerator was pressed down 100%. There was absolutely no braking, none. The steering wheel moved slightly. At one point, the gear shifted from drive to neutral, which investigators believe was Dominic or Davion desperately trying to save themselves. Can you guys even imagine that level of terror? This is like this part of the documentary. I literally started tearing up because it just is so horrifically scary to me to think about what was going through their heads. And those boys knew, they knew something was wrong. And meanwhile, she never touched the brake, not once. The investigators start digging into Mackenzie's past, and honestly, girl was apparently a effing nightmare. So, classmates described her as a bully. People said her parents constantly made excuses for her behavior. Whenever she got in trouble, she somehow ended up with like more freedom instead of consequences. Her parents, oh my gosh, I feel like I could touch on this one even deeper, but I feel like judging other people's parenting is a little off limits, but also these they're just they were just terrible. So, anyway, one classmate even claimed that Mackenzie had put some kind of like a voodoo spell on Dominic because he kept going back to her despite how toxic things were with their relationship. Now, personally, I don't think that we need voodoo to explain this situation. I think Dominic was young. I think he was emotionally attached and kind of like stuck in this like deeply unhealthy relationship because according to Dominic's family and friends, this relationship was like bad, like really, really bad. Dominic's brother said that he had tried breaking up with her multiple times, even weeks before this crash happened. And then Dominic's friend Chris drops one of the most like chilling details in this documentary. So Chris tells police that shortly before the crash, Dominic called him from the car asking to be picked up because he was trying to break up with Mackenzie. And during that argument, Chris says that he heard Mackenzie yell, "I'll crash this car right now." Excuse me, boo boo. So, like 2 weeks before the crash, she allegedly threatens to crash the car with Dominic inside of it. And then she drives nearly 100 miles an hour into a building without braking. But yes, I'm sure this was all just a mysterious coincidence. Please. At that point, the evidence is just absolutely overwhelming. The car worked. She wasn't impaired. She held down the accelerator. There was a no brake attempt. They had a toxic relationship, and there was threats beforehand that she was literally going to do the thing that happened. So investigators conclude that this was absolutely intentional, and Mackenzie Shirilla is arrested. Now, although the trial, she continues like claiming her innocence, while Dominic and Davion's families are forced to sit there and relive the most horrific moments imaginable. Like even listening to that car, it literally sounded like a jet engine just flying past on those cameras, and the sound of the crash. It's just so sad. Like living with that sound in your head for the rest of your life, knowing that your baby was in that vehicle. It's I don't know why this case is so hard for me. It breaks my heart. So Rosie, she still defends Mackenzie and says she loved herself way too much to commit suicide, which honestly is maybe like the least convincing defense I've ever heard in my entire life. So the defense suddenly like introduces the idea that Mackenzie may have suffered from a medical emergency from POTS, which, if you're unfamiliar, I only did air quotes because I think it's complete bullshit that Mackenzie has POTS, but POTS is a condition that can affect heart rate and blood pressure, sometimes causing dizziness or fainting. Convenient timing, though, right? Because prosecutors point out that, like, if she truly blacked out, how exactly did she manage to navigate the winding turns at nearly 100 miles an hour before the impact? Exactly. She couldn't do that. Also, so the fact is, if she did have POTS, here's another thing though, too. She would have gone limp. So not only could she not navigate the turns, her foot would have eased off the gas. Okay. Like, there's dumbest excuse ever. I think her mother is insane. Okay. Dominic's mother introduces video footage of an argument, though, between Mackenzie and Dominic from 2 weeks prior to the crash. And honestly, it's super dark. You can see the rage, the manipulation, the volatility, and and like this evidence, it completely destroys this image of her as some innocent, lovesick girl. Eventually, she is found guilty of murder on 2 counts, and somehow it even gets worse. So, at the sentencing, prosecutors reveal that months after the crash, Mackenzie posted TikTok videos dressed up as her and her friends dressed up as 3 corpses for Halloween. So disrespectful. Like, what? I can't even. Like, those 2 boys are dead. The families are destroyed, and you're doing corpse themed TikToks for Halloween. There's absolutely no mourning, no visible remorse, and no accountability. And then comes her apology to the families, which honestly felt so forced. It was very half-assed, half-hearted, and I feel like it just made everyone angrier. She ultimately is sentenced to 15 years to life, and honestly, good. I think it should have been 2 consecutive, so it should have been 30 total, but whatever the judge did, what the judge did. And it's, Dominic and Davion do not get another chance at life. And that's what makes me so upset about this case. Davion's family later starts a scholarship fund to help a student attend barber school each year because Davion's dream was to become a barber. And that part really made me super sad. Like, it genuinely like wrecked me because, like, these were real boys, these were real families, these were real futures that were like absolutely stolen forever. And Netflix touched on that sadness, but I'll be honest, the Hulu documentary was way more brutal and way more honest of how manipulative and terrifying Mackenzie really was. So Netflix almost like softened her, but Hulu did not. The Hulu version leaned harder into the evidence and the psychological control, like the rage and the relationship toxicity. And it painted a much clearer picture of why prosecutors believe that it was, in fact, murder. Because after watching everything, I do not believe this was an accident, like, not for 1 second. And I truly cannot imagine the pain Dominic and Davion's families live with every single day. So, that was my brief rundown. I went down a really big rabbit hole, you guys. I don't know why I've been so obsessed with this case. I think Mackenzie's a horrible person. I think if you have listened to the video or the phone calls, you can find them on YouTube between her and her mother, thinking that Kim Kardashian is going to take on her case and save her life and she'll be like free or whatever. Like, this girl is absolutely delusional, and she thinks, like, the way that she spoke on the Netflix documentary at the end, like, she really thinks she runs that place. Like, she's like, she thinks she's queen bee in jail. She thinks she's like a little thug, and it just made me hate her more. So, and I don't like tend to hate anyone, but I really do hope that she rots in prison for the rest of her life. Okay, moms, we need to discuss toddler teething again because I would like to formally apologize to the universe for saying, wow, The first molars were brutal. No, I was a little naive. I was a fool because enter the canines. These tiny vampire teeth from hell are really ruining our Memorial Day weekend. Why are they shaped like that? Why do they arrive with the emotional energy of a demonic possession? Like my sweet little angel baby has turned into a feral raccoon who alternates between wanting cuddles and wanting to physically fight me because, his banana broke in half. And honestly, I get it. If knives were actively erupting through my gums, I'd probably be as dramatic as well. The drool is back. The random crying is back. The refusal to eat anything except somehow also wanting to eat everything is back. Sleep it's going, but it's going rough. It's a suggestion, a distant memory. But despite the teething chaos, this kid has become such a little person lately. And it's honestly blowing my mind, like it does every single week. I love watching my baby grow. First off, his favorite new word is ew. Also, one of my favorite words. I don't even wonder. I know he got that from me because everything is ew. But yes, he's saying it correctly. I love that. Who taught him that attitude? I don't know. I handed him a yogurt the other day and he literally looked at it and he went, ew. It was actually really cute. The audacity toddlers have, honestly, needs to be studied scientifically. But my little chatterbox is talking nonstop lately, like full toddler yapping mode from sunrise to sunset, narrating his life, asking questions and repeating everything. And honestly, hearing his little voice develop has been one of my favorite parts of motherhood. Even when he's like aggressively saying ew to the food I've cooked him, it doesn't matter because he's so cute. He's also getting super artistic lately with coloring. Oh my gosh, that was a tough word. And it's really cute watching his like brain work in real time. I know I say this all the time, but he gets so serious about it, like he's creating some kind of masterpiece at a gallery opening. Meanwhile, it's just one violent scribble, and it's just so cute. The other day, he had his bluey coloring book, and he was drawing, and he said the dog. They said that was mommy, and he was coloring mommy. So that was like the sweetest thing in the world. But what is really crazy is how much he actually remembers. So this kid knows all of his colors. He knows them so well. He's also starting to count everything. So snacks, toys, crayons. He's putting everything like in piles, or he has an organizational structure that I don't understand. It's like I'm suddenly living with like a tiny drunk accountant that's very specific about where his toys are placed. And I think narrating everything that we do, like at least I do this, has helped him so much with his language development. I basically talked to him like a little coworker since birth. Like, oh wow, mommy is loading the dishwasher. Look at the blue cup. Like we're putting on socks. Mommy needs caffeine before she passes away. Just educational things. And I think it really does work. Kids absorb everything, which also, can we please talk about how this child has apparently grown another 6 feet overnight? I swear I blinked and suddenly, like, none of his pants fit again. Like, where are you getting this height from? Respectfully, it's not from me. Every time I buy clothes, I feel financially attacked for 3 weeks. Toddler moms know that it's like when you finally organize your drawers, you feel accomplished, and suddenly your child looks like they're borrowing capris from some younger cousin or something. But even in that chaos, like the teething, the tantrums, and the constant snacking, these moments are so special to me because one day he won't, mispronounce words anymore. And one day he won't excitedly show me every scribble of his colors or narrate his entire world to me. So I don't know, it just makes me emotional, especially after the last story. And just, he's my little boy, and I just love him so much. But yeah, even though like all of that is just flying by, and then we have these hard days, getting to watch him just like learn and grow has been the coolest thing I have ever experienced in my life. And I'm super glad I will have this podcast to kind of like listen back and see how he's grown and developed over the past year. All right, friends, that is it for today's episode. We have laughed, we've cried, and we've collectively judged Mackenzie Shirilla, and we survived another week of toddler teething updates. As always, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Seriously, getting to yap with you every week about internet chaos, documentaries, motherhood, or whatever nonsense is happening in my life has become one of my favorite things. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you follow, leave a review, send it to a friend, or aggressively post it on your Instagram story like the supportive icons that you are. And remember, if your toddler says ew to your cooking this week, just know somewhere out there, mine is doing the exact same thing. I love you guys so very much. I will see you next week. Okay, love you. Bye. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The facts are fuzzy. Our stories and opinions are just that, stories and opinions, not meant to be taken as professional advice.